Welcome everyone to another episode of the Will and Rock MMA podcast.
What's going on, everybody?
Alright, so let's get straight to it. We have some fights that were officially announced this week and last week. So the first one that was announced was on UFC 238. They officially signed Donald Cerrone against Tony Ferguson. This is happening June 8th in the United Center in Chicago. Very, very interesting fight due to the fact that Cerrone is coming off of, not even 3 months?
I think it's a 3-month layoff he's going to take before he takes this fight.
Yeah, which is really short because he just came from beating Alaia Quinta.
Are you surprised, though? Are you surprised with Cerrone?
I'm not surprised with Cerrone coming right back into fight. What I am surprised about is that although he was very dominant in the fight and didn't take major damage, it's still a little too quick. I think he should have waited just a little bit, settle in a little bit before he goes in, because this is one of the biggest fights in his career, if you stop and think about it, because he takes a win like with Tony Ferguson, he has the next shot at the title.
Without a doubt. I think you're absolutely right. The interesting part is Cerrone's just jumping right back into it, and then you look at someone like Tony Ferguson, who's coming from a long layover, from injuries and craziness that happened in his personal life, to now jumping back into the octagon. My biggest concern is Cerrone moving too fast. The thing that we need to take into consideration is that when he did fight his last fight versus Alaia Quinta, that was a 5-round fight. It wasn't a 3-round fight where he completed. That was a 5-round of full domination that he was cardio at 1,000%. Now he needs to he's going right back into training. There's no layoff. There's no him, taking maybe a month off. He's got to go right back into training, because when you're finding someone like Tony Ferguson, who is totally somebody who could fully course. If anybody has the cardio to run 5 rounds, it's someone like Tony Ferguson, which I think this fight will not be a 5-rounder. I don't think it's the main event to a card. I think it's going to be one of the UFC pay-per-view events.
Yeah, it is a pay-per-view event. It is the third fight in that card. Last time I looked at the lineup.
Oh, that's right.
So you're right. It might not be a 5-round fight, which most likely it won't be in this case. But we're going to have to wait and see. The next fight that was officially booked, which caught us completely by surprise.
It caught everybody off guard. By the way, amazing job with the UFC keeping this on the wraps.
Absolutely. Anthony Pettis is going up against the long time coming already, Nate Diaz. This is happening at UFC 241 in Anaheim, August 17th. Now let's talk about that a little bit. We have Nate Diaz, who has been out of competition for going on 3 years, right?
Oh, yeah.
Going almost 3 years. You have a guy like Anthony Pettis, who had one of the biggest wins of his career versus Wonder Boy Thompson, right? It's a very interesting fight in the sense that we know what Pettis brings into the octagons, because we've seen him fight back to back. He fought against Tony Ferguson, who almost had him but ended up losing, and then kind of losing this last fight till last minute, turned it around like Pettis would, normally does, and knocks out a guy like Wonder Boy, right? And then we have a guy like Nate Diaz, who really haven't seen perform. I can't even think of the last time who he fought. Who was it he fought last time? Was it Conor McGregor?
I think his last fight was Conor, which was obviously the second fight, right? Because they were thinking about doing the trilogy, and he never took it.
Mm-hmm.
That was Conor was his last fight. One thing we do know about Nate is that he stays very active. He stays in the gym all the time. It's something that he constantly posts on his Instagram page. Obviously we know who he trains with, the top dogs. Melendez. You got Jake Shields, his brother Nick Diaz. So he's constantly staying busy. We know he's prepared for a fight like this. I don't think someone like him is going to have ring rust. My biggest thing is what Anthony Pettis is going to show up. I think we already know what Nate Diaz is going to stand in front of the octagon and wait for the impact. He just turned into his brother, by the way. Where before you would see them grab a little bit more, go for the submission. They're just boxers. It seems like to be very purist when it comes to boxing. That's Anthony Pettis' game plan as well. His stand-up game. We saw how it was a last-minute knockout that he had versus Wonder Boy. He was losing the whole fight. It was that one punch that changed the whole game. We know the punches that Nate Diaz can take. Could Pettis really finish Nate? That's the biggest question. Now, could Nate Diaz just outwork Pettis and win a decision? We know that that's what I'm predicting on this fight. Either way, I think the UFC has taken these routes and putting in fights like, oh, we're listening to fans now.
Yeah,
we're totally listening to
time.
fans now.
It's
about time Nate jumps back into the octagon.
And they have bad blood, from my understanding.
Yeah.
They don't like each other. They've been wanting to set this fight for a while. So that's just the only reason why I think Nate Diaz said, you know what, fuck it, put me down, because he didn't want to fight anybody but somebody with the title, right? He pulled out of the Dustin Poirier fight for whatever reason. So a very interesting matchup for both fighters. Something to look forward to. And then last but not least, we had the last announcement. This was just announced yesterday. Today's Tuesday. We have to keep that in mind. Featherweight champ Max Holloway stepping back into the octagon to fight against Frankie Edgar at UFC 240. This is happening July 27th in Edmonton, Canada. Now, let's talk about that a little bit. Max Holloway, very similar to the other one, coming off of a loss against Dustin Poirier for the lightweight title. I mean, the interim lightweight title. And then we have a guy like Frankie Edgar, whose last performance was against, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, was it against Brian or no? He beat somebody.
He ended up coming back and winning the fight, but that was also by decision. Can't exactly recall who he was last fighting, but I will say that this, to me, I think someone like Max Holloway, who first of all does not get knocked out and who has serious power, after what happened to Frankie versus Ortega, it's really challenging for me to really believe that Frankie could actually pull off a victory here. If we think, could Frankie outwork Max Holloway because his speed and his movement? No one outworks Max Holloway. Even in his last fight, he didn't get outworked. So what advantages does Frankie Edgar really hold on this fight? And size is not against him, reach is not against him. This is an extremely challenging fight for someone like Frankie Edgar. But we both know, he deserves a title shot. I mean, this guy he's always one fight away from a title shot, and he ends up losing the fight. He just came off a big victory. I know he fought last fight. I can't remember exactly who he fought, but he ends up coming up with a victory. Totally worth watching him fight.
Yeah, that's the only reason why they would put him against a guy like Max Holloway. But anyways, something to really look forward to. Again, Max Holloway just coming off he just lost his last fight, and Frankie Edgar, who hasn't been in the octagon to perform as of late. So something to really look forward to. 3 amazing, exciting matchups coming to us this year.
Surprisingly, not that surprisingly that these are going to be good fights, because it seems like the UFC is really putting names together, but these are super fights. These are fights that you have to tune in. And then a fight like Tony Ferguson versus Cerrone not being a main event. How big and how stacked is that card that'll be the 3rd fight in that round? And I wish we could freaking see what card exactly it is that we're talking about. But interesting enough, I think it's something to behold. The UFC's listening to fans. That I believe.
Yeah.
All right, so let's just jump into the UFC 237. Amanda Nunes. What the fuck am I saying? Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas. That card was so fucking amazing.
It was a lot of fun.
Not a good night for the Brazilians to the main event, but we'll get into that. First fight of the night, we had Irene Adana, who defeated Beth Correia by submission and armbar. I will tell you, Beth Correia does not look good.
Yeah. Well, she started off a little aggressive. I got to give it to her. She started off a little aggressive, but you started to see that she kept on throwing that overall right hand that wasn't landing flush. So you could tell she was getting really tired. She pretty much gave it all in the first round, and little by little you start to see the Mexican fighter just really taking over this bout little by little, and just start jabbing away. Before you know it, was it a submission?
It was a submission,
right?
Yeah.
She caught her in an armbar, and immediately Correia just completely tapped. I believe it was sunk in pretty well. However, not enough for any other fighter to really give up. It was just, I believe she was really tired, man.
I think there was a lot riding on Correia. First of all, she's fighting in her hometown in Brazil. She looked like there was nerves going into that fight. You could tell when you've been watching many fights and you watch the characteristics and just behaviors of these fighters, you start realizing, this person is extremely comfortable under pressure. And some of them tried to play it off by being really hype, and it's tough to see. I personally I could actually see through Correia. She looked extremely nervous fighting. She took a long layoff before this fight as well. Did not look good on her part. And at the end of the day, Correia fought her fight, which is the more aggressive fighter, the more power hitter, and Irene just picked her apart. Like, she did such a phenomenal job. By the way, shout outs to Irene, who is first of all a great descendant of a Mexican fighter, someone who stands in front of you and bangs with you, and is so fully well-rounded. I was really impressed by her. I haven't heard much of her, so it's interesting who they're gonna match her up with next. Which there is a ton of fights for her, by the way.
Oh, a lot, and it was a great fight to start off with the card in Brazil, especially. So, what's the next one, Rock?
The next fight, we got Leonardo Scarponi, who actually defeated Thiago Alves. And Thiago Alves, and just listen to the commentary from John Anik and Dominic Cruz and Daniel Cormier. They did such a phenomenal job calling the fight. They were saying Thiago Alves is the vet in this fight, taking his time with this fight, not really like. When he did throw his right and left hand, they were throwing bombs, but he was preserving a lot of that for power hitting. Did not do enough in this card to continue going. I was really, we both had mentioned prior to this fight, Thiago Alves, if he wants to stick around in this game and be relevant in this game, he needs a big victory. And not only did he was lackluster, he didn't throw much enough, and he got completely dominated by the Argentinian.
It was just one of those fights where you're just waiting. Okay, when is Thiago Alves coming out? When is Thiago going to come out? And you could tell sometimes he came in very aggressive, throwing his right and left, some combinations that actually landed. But then, all of a sudden, the Argentinian fighter just started moving forward again, and then you started to see Thiago Alves moving back.
Wasn't it interesting that the Argentinian fighter knew full-blown Portuguese?
Yeah, well, he trains in Brazil, so it is.
With the shoot.
But it was, you know, we saw a lot of Thiago Alves moving back. Unfortunately, not being the aggressor. When he was, it was just for a really spurt moment, and then before you know it, the Argentina had him running pretty much backwards. I'm not going to say it was a horrible performance by Thiago Alves. However, how many times do we have to continue saying this? It's been, I think, 4 losses already in a row. It's
Thiago Alves?
Yeah.
No, Thiago Alves just came out of a victory.
Oh.
Yeah,
I take that back. Yeah, you're completely right. But however, he hasn't been performing as well. Yes, he did win his last fight. You're right. But again, did not get completely dominated, but for sure lost that fight. You know?
Absolutely. And once again, shout out to the Argentinian. Once again, another South American fighter wins in South America, I guess. But let's bring it back to those Spanish countries. We got Alexander Volkovsky, who defeated Jose Aldo. By the way, Leonardo ended up winning by decision. And very similar, Alexander Volkovsky literally took over and completely dominated Jose Aldo just by staying busier. Same thing with Alves. Jose Aldo was preserving his hits and just waiting, not wanting to gas himself out. Just did not do enough. We just see sparks of old Jose when he threw a couple of the flying knees. Just not close, and he looked like he wasn't 100% there.
He wasn't. You could tell that he didn't. He was kind of scared to lay it on the Australian fighter. He kept on going in and out, but did not put the performance that we're used to seeing from Jose Aldo. Unfortunately, we're starting to see an older Jose Aldo. Keep in mind, Jose Aldo's only 32 years old, but he's been in the game for such a long time, so many fights. Normally at this age is the prime of the fighters just come out of their shell. Jose Aldo's been taste gold for many years. You know, it's unfortunate. He's one of my favorite fighters. He even said that's the worst performance that I ever put in the octagon. So I don't expect him to retire. I expect him to come right back stronger than ever. And if he learned anything from this fight, is that you need to go out there and give it your all and go for that submission or that knockout. You know.
Yeah, I mean, he's never known to be really one of the guys to go long and go into us and win by decision as well. So, next fight we had another legend lose. Jared Connor ended up defeating Anderson Silva by TKO kicks in round 1 with 4 minutes left. And that just shows you that, well, according to Anderson Silva and Anderson Silva's camp, Silva had knee issues in sparring and going into that fight. Late into that fight, he just didn't want to pull out, which, you know what, we do believe someone like Anderson Silva in that aspect, because he's not one to pull off any card. He's been fighting for so many years, such a freaking vet of the sport, and such a professional athlete when it comes to, and respectful athlete in the sport. Anderson Silva's legs are giving out on him. His hands are still really fast. He still looks like he can stand up with the best of them. His legs have been, we talk about like Chris Weidman and the breaking his leg with the leg kick. This wasn't that far different from what just happened. And by the way, Jared Connor, I'm going to say he is more impressive than I gave him credit for. Forget that he had just come off an impressive victory versus Branch. I think this guy is the fucking truth. He's built like a tank. He's going to be tough to beat, man.
I don't disagree with you. He does a great job of using his leg work, like leg kick, should I say. His stand-up is not bad. As we all know, he does have the power to knock your lights out, which he did in his last 3 fights. So I expected for Anderson Silva to get knocked out. He did not get knocked out. However, he did get... it did go in as a TKO because of the leg injury that he sustained during the fight.
Because it was an impact.
It was an impact before he collapsed on the floor. You could really tell Anderson Silva was in a lot of pain. I don't know exactly what happened. We haven't looked back at the results, whether or not he has some major injury to that leg, or, you know, the minute I saw his leg seemed to be intact. And the minute I see that, it maybe could have been a tendon, maybe could have been his MCL, his ACL. We're not sure or aware what exactly happened. But you know what? At the end of the day, Anderson Silva's standing up strong, man. He doesn't look like he's that age he is, you know, to a certain extent. I don't want him to retire. I want him to take one more fight. I want to really see with no injuries, very similar to with the Israel Adesanya fight. You know, stood up with Adesanya, made it a very competitive and really good fight at his age. I would like to see him step in the octagon again. He's not a guy that should retire yet.
It's unfortunate. He's always one punch away from victory. The way he looks, like we said, looks very impressive for someone who's 44 years old, first of all. And he moves he moves great, man. He just, you know, people are starting to figure out that long stance. Yeah. You know, that leaves your full leg exposed, your inside leg exposed, and that's what's happening. That's what happened to him, and it's unfortunate. Fortunate event from him, but if he does fight again, he needs to be 100%. We can no longer see him go in there and say, "Hey, listen, I had a problem with my knee before a fight." He's not at that age where he can just pull that off. He's not, you know, Tony Ferguson. He really needs to understand he's at 44 years old. If he's going into this fight with an injury, you need to pull out. You can't take fights like this anymore.
No, yeah.
And it's not good. It's not good for him. It's not good for his health, and it's definitely not good for his legacy. So
and the sport.
I agree. Yeah. I agree. And last but not least, we had Andrade versus Rose, and oh my fucking god, with 4 minutes in the second round. First of all, this is what bugs me about the whole fight. Rose is completely dominating this fight. No. Oh my god,
from the beginning of the beginning.
There's no excuse. I totally agree. There's no excuse on any fighter's part. They both look so prepared, but you realize that Andrade did not have the right game plan going into that, and the only thing she could have done was try to out-wrestle her, but man, it was Nunes, not Nunes, I keep saying that. Now Nunes was jumping right back into her feet and then making it into a fight. She was picking her apart with her left jab, both left jab and right jab. Yeah. Just did a phenomenal job with her hands, and it's unfortunate the way she lost. I am heartbroken the way she lost. She was picked up with, like I said, in the second round, 4 minutes left, and just slammed in her head, which if we stop and think about Rampage and stuff like that, that was such a dope thing to do. Yeah. Brazil needed that, man.
Yeah, Brazil needed it so bad.
Brazil needed that so bad for that card. Brazil was down 4-0 in that card, technically, and...
You know, just to elaborate a little bit more on what you're saying, you know, the minute the bell rang in the first round, within a minute of that fight, Namajunas already had Andrade's left eye all beaten the fuck up. Like, she was swelling already. She was swelling.
Bleeding, yeah.
The minute the bell rung, Nama Nunes went up to her face and threw the craziest left hook and right hand to the face that you could hear the leather of the fucking glove hit the face of Andrade. Even on the television screen, you could feel it, you could hear it. It was just so loud, you know what I mean? And then little by little, I'm like, damn, Nama Nunes is picking her apart. However, you could still see the power with Andrade. She was still in the fight the whole time. It's not like she wasn't in the fight, if you ask me. It was only the second round where you start to see Jessica Andrade be the more of the aggressor fighter. And that's when you start to see the takedowns. That's when Nama Nunes had to go get herself from the floor to pick herself back up because she was on her back for a little bit of time. But what a tremendous slam. What a highlight reel. This is going to go on one of the best highlight reels in Andrade's career, besides the knockout that she had before that. Versus Carolina. Amazing fight. Looking forward to seeing Rose come back, although she's not 100% sure that she wants to come back anymore. She feels like she has nothing to prove and all the pressures are off of her back because she no longer has the belt. But I'm looking forward to Andrade. Let's talk about Andrade. I mean, she's an amazing fighter. They call it the Andrade Slam because she's known for doing that. So it's not something that came out of nowhere, as we know, right? So, anyways, man, something to really look forward to between these two fighters.
I just throw it out there. I think Nama Nunes deciding to retire at the prime of her career. I must say that is the prime of her career because, man, did she look good in that fight. I think... I have so much respect for that girl, man. I have so much respect. She leaves it all on the line. She leaves her emotions are completely in front of the cameras. She says it and she calls it how it is. I totally agree. I'm totally with if she decides to retire. Like, congratulations for putting up amazing fights for us and the UFC.
And never shine on a good fight. She has the belt, but she's still the aggressor.
I agree. And most importantly, if she decides to come back, I almost can guarantee staying away from Andrade's clinch game, you will be victorious. That's just what I'm predicting. So kudos to Andrade for pulling up a good fight and doing what she needed to do. Something completely different to actually get that victory because she was not going to win on her feet.
Let's talk about the predictions.
Next fight, we got this May 18th, which is technically this Saturday. Fuck, what is it? Every Saturday is a fight? This is UFC on ESPN plus 10, Dos Anjos versus Lee. This fight is also... actually, where is this fight? This is in Rochester, New York, which we should have gone. All right. Either way, the first fight in the main event, we got Austin Hubbard versus the V Ramos. Ramos being the Brazilian and Austin being the American. Not 100% sure about either fighter. They both have very impressive records. Austin 8-2, the V 9-2. Something to look forward to.
You said enough.
I got the next fight. We have another American versus Brazilian. We got the American Nick Lentz, which is a fucking tough cookie. And then you're looking at someone like Charles Oliveira, which is a very unpredictable fighter. This is the fight that I like the way the UFC put this together because as you guys hear some of these names that's going to come up in this card I feel is either should have started the card to really pump this thing up, but I don't know who the fuck is going to win this fight, man. 100% Oliveira wins if he comes in 100%. But if you talk about Nick Lentz's power and the power behind his right hand, it's tough to say. I mean, we've seen Oliveira get knocked out before. We've seen Oliveira submit the person in no time. This is the fight to watch, bro. This is the fight that is gonna pump up this card. My personal opinion.
I don't disagree with you. I think this is the card that people really should tune into. The fight, should I say, that people should tune into because it's one of the highlights of this card. Truly is. And I do have Charles Oliveira winning this fight by decision or submission. Who do you have? You did not pick your fighter.
I got Oliveira winning this fight. I think he's a better overall fighter. I think Nick Lentz is at the point of his career where he's really looking for that power hit, and that's really what he really has in his arsenal. Interesting enough, he's fighting a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm curious to what he's going to do. I think the more complete fighter is Charles. I'm going Charles on this one. Next fight, we got Megan Anderson versus Felice Spencer. This is also a fucking phenomenal fight. I think these two women are totally on the come up. Megan Anderson has been going up and down in her career. She's actually started off extremely strong and then took a couple of losses by Holly Holmes, and I forgot exactly who she lost before that as well. I also believe that this fight has so much potential and behind it. I do have Megan Anderson winning. She's the bigger fighter going into this fight. She's the bigger name going into this fight. I got Megan Anderson winning this fight.
I have a hard time not picking Megan Anderson. I'm in the same boat as you. I think Felice Spencer, should I say, is a tremendous fighter. She's undefeated. We expect more out of her, but however, we know what Megan Anderson brings to the table, and I have Megan Anderson winning by decision.
Sounds good. Next fight, we got Ian Heinisch, who's fighting Antonio Carlos Jr. This is a fucking phenomenal fight. I'm curious to how much noise this fight is going to make. Yep. I do have the Brazilian winning this fight. I think he's going to grapple his way into a submission, or this is going to be a decision win, dealing with just Antonio completely dragging him through the octagon.
You know what? I have a hard time disagreeing with you. However, I'm going to go with Ian. I believe that Ian has the power not only to stop the takedown, but also the power to knock out a guy like Junior. So I'm going with Ian on this one.
Next fight, we got Vicente Luque, which we were looking forward to watching this fight big time versus Neil Magny to be exact. And Neil Magny ends up having to pull out last minute in this card due to a surgery he needed to take. Something I don't know exactly.
It wasn't disclosed. Nobody really knows exactly why he pulled out of the fight. By the end of the day today, or maybe even tomorrow, they should say something about it. But I was reading onto it. Nobody really would discuss exactly what was wrong with Neil Magny.
Was there any talks about a surgery of any sort?
No, I would have said something.
Okay.
We wish him a speedy recovery and hope he gets well really soon.
Sure. And then last but not, by the way, so that fight is to be announced. That Luque still doesn't have a fighter. It's going on this Saturday. I think they're looking to see if they could get a last minute card. If not, I'm pretty sure if not by tomorrow,
they're gonna pull out the card.
Thursday, they will scratch that card. Finally, the main event, we got Rafael Dos Anjos versus Kevin Lee. I have Kevin Lee winning this fight. I think Kevin Lee finds ways to get all the way to the top and finds a way back down to the same place. I think this is another stepping stone for Kevin Lee. I'm curious if we're going to see the same Kevin Lee or more motivated, somebody who's more prepared to fight, and not leave it up to the judges. So I'm still going Kevin Lee on this fight.
What do you have Kevin Lee winning?
I got Kevin Lee. I got Kevin Lee stoppage just because I feel like he really needs a stoppage in this fight. I got him getting a stoppage in the second round.
I actually have who am I kidding? I have Kevin Lee winning this fight as well. I believe he's gonna drag this fight into the later rounds, and he's gonna get that big win.
Sounds good, guys. I will say that's a great card to go on ESPN. So I'm looking forward to watching that fight as well. Anything else you want to throw in there?
Man, we'll see you guys next week.
Peace, my people.
Peace.